Adam's Log, April 11th, 2016. Disney Infinity is finished, kaput. It apparently is not infinite, and this is not really surprising to me, although I guess I'll say I wouldn't have expected it to happen this early. I would have figured maybe one more game, 4.0 before they finally threw in the towel with this, because the reviews for the Star Wars game were a lot better, a lot of them, than the reviews for the Marvel game. I was hearing great things from people. I honestly kind of expected when that game came out that people might start to really see what Disney was doing with it and be irritated like I was, that it seemed like every year or two you had to buy another piece of hardware. I mean, yeah, you could download it, but you'd still need the figures and stuff. And there's a starter kit every couple of years. Wait, the word infinity is in your game. Disney Infinity. It sounds like a thing that would keep going for a long time. It sounds like you'd buy a game, and then you'd get figures, and then you'd have more levels that you could buy that would go on top of it, and maybe it would be understandable if every 4 or 5 or 6 years you had to buy a new game, but not every couple of years. That doesn't sound like that doesn't sound like a constant ongoing platform, this expansive world you're supposed to keep constantly building. That sounds like a limited game with sequels. And yes, you can use the figures from the previous games in your toy box and all the stuff you build, but I don't think that they really delivered on what they seemed to be promising early on, and I think the word infinity was really misleading in the first place. So, I kind of thought that 3.0 would kind of be the last straw for some people, but it's Star Wars, and it's a pretty good Star Wars game. I've played through a little bit of the Clone Wars level. I haven't played Twilight of the Republic, and I haven't played the Force Awakens one yet, but I really liked what I was seeing, but I didn't feel like I was playing Disney Infinity. I felt like I was playing a Star Wars game with kind of more cutesy-looking characters, kind of more cartoony versions, but it felt like a really authentic, linear Star Wars experience, and it was really good for that. I mean, it's a really good Star Wars game. It makes sense that it was popular, and that it did really well, or at least I thought it was doing really well. People were talking about it, and I felt like I was hearing more people talk about it than I was LEGO Dimensions. And I was getting a little bit nervous that LEGO Dimensions might not be able to compete with Disney, even with Disney Infinity, even though it seemed to me like they were responding to some of the fan complaints with Disney Infinity and some of the limitations that game had that it didn't seem like it really needed to have, and giving you a little bit more bang for your buck, I thought. I guess the numbers weren't as good as it seemed like they were, and as Dan has said in video game videos he and I have done before, we don't really have sales numbers a lot of the time for video games. They're not really released to the public, or at least I don't think they are. I never see them, and so and if this is common knowledge for these things and I'm not aware of it, somebody give me a link. But I don't think these sales numbers are really open to the public, and so you have to kind of just guess based on public opinion and based on where a company goes next with the thing. So it wasn't doing well enough to keep going according to their projections versus how well this last version of the game really sold. When Steve brought this up on our Geekvolution Google chat last night, and I decided to make a log on it, and his comment was, really, Disney owning as much as they do now, being as massive as they are, getting out of Disney Infinity, wouldn't they want to stay in video games and keep trying to dominate there? And yes, I totally agree with them. They are doing other video game stuff, but this seemed to be kind of the biggest franchise they had going, and it's I don't think anybody really expected it to shut down this early, but you got to consider how expensive this stuff is to make and to keep that and to keep it going, because as I said, they keep putting out a new starter pack every year or two. That is that's massive overhead to put out that much hardware, to put out that much plastic, to keep releasing all of those figures. And it's not like just releasing a video game. It's like releasing, I don't know what it's comparable to. It's got to be like releasing a whole system, with video games, or I guess it's, releasing hardware and also a whole toy line. It would be like if you made a video game and then you also had an entire toy line that went with it to support it and supplement it, like you're just merchandising the thing, kind of like the Arkham games. But with this, those figures are crucial. They're part of how you sell the whole thing. They're part of the game. And so if that stuff isn't, and who knows how close it was to, or how not close it was to the projections that Disney was expecting, it must have been a massive failure, and it wasn't clear looking at it. But that stuff, all the Toys to Life stuff was on sale around Christmas, and it seems like every year there are some sales for that, but massive sales this year for Toys to Life, and I wasn't seeing nearly as many markdowns in other places in toys and video games and stuff as I was seeing with this. Disney Infinity, all the figures were like, everywhere I went, buy one get one free, 30-40% off. The starter kits were like marked down, 30-40%. But the same thing was true of LEGO Dimensions, and it was much newer and of course it just came out, last year or just the year before. And so I don't know what this means for the future of Toys to Life. But I will say that I think a lot of the reason, if it wasn't selling well enough to warrant the massive expenses that it has to take. I mean, even if you're Disney, it's still a big, massive expenditure. I totally understand why you wouldn't keep it going if it's not selling. I think, I don't know if this would fix it, and this is why it's going to be really interesting to see how long LEGO Dimensions goes, because I think LEGO Dimensions is what we thought Disney was kind of promising with Infinity in the first place. When I first, and let me go on the record and say, I really like Disney Infinity. I think it could have been a lot more customizable, and that's where I get off saying, it's not quite what I thought we were promised in the first place. It's not infinite enough. And I don't mean that there aren't enough characters and there aren't enough levels and things. I mean that it's not infinite enough in the sense that there's not like infinite combinations of things you can do. They make it very limited, and that's really clear once you start playing the game. I felt like when I bought the first game that there was kind of some fine print, kind of some red tape that I wouldn't have thought to go look up before I bought the game. And I don't think I was alone in this, and I think ultimately this probably helped to kill it, and this isn't something they fixed with 2.0. I don't think anybody expected 2.0 to come out as early as it did. And when that happened, I was like, okay, I can kind of see it with refining the toy box and making the tools easier to use, and they did that, and it was better. I've heard 3.0 they improved upon that even more, but you could also do that with updates. They acted like they were limited by the technology. LEGO Dimensions isn't limited by the technology. We have DLC for things all the time. You couldn't have engineered this in the first, or at least with the second one. If the technology wasn't there in the first place, because this has been around for a good long time now, if the technology wasn't there because 2010, Lone Ranger was one of the initial playsets, because there was no way to know how hard that movie was going to bomb when it came out. So that's how long Disney Infinity has been around. It's been about 6 years now. But you couldn't have, at least with the second one, engineered it in such a way where you could keep updating that software and improve upon it as you go along. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about this. I find that a little bit hard to believe. And so it looks like, and I'm not saying this is exactly what it is, because I don't know. I'm not with Disney. I'm not there. But I could see how this would turn off some consumers if this was the leap they made, and I could see people making this leap, that it looks like they're not doing what they could do to make it easier and more inexpensive for the players because it's another way to milk money out of you. And it's already a money-milking kind of game, but you know that going in. You know that this is a thing that is appealing to the collector. It's the same thing as like a collectible card game. It's Pokemon. You gotta catch them all. And you could have had all those characters built into the first place, and you could have not made it about collecting physical objects, but that's part of the appeal of it, and people know what they're getting into. So they know that it's a, money guzzler kind of thing in the first place. What I think a lot of people didn't know when they first bought it was that a lot of your figures wouldn't be playable inside of other play sets. It would be limited, so that you'd only be able to play, for instance, with the say Incredibles figures or the Monsters Inc. figures inside of the Incredibles and Monsters Inc. Playsets. But in the toy box, you could play with everybody, and you would have a lot of figures that you could only play with in the toy box, and they would have special moves, and they would come with special weapons and things, but you'd only be able to use them in the levels you create or levels you download from other people, and you wouldn't be able to play with them in the playsets. And you might say, well, yeah, the whole point of it is to build your own levels and make your own stuff, and the playsets are just kind of these extra adventures so that you have a little bit more bang for your buck, and so that you can, and so that it can kind of work your imagination and help you realize things that you could do for yourself inside the toy box. The problem for me is I don't think a lot of people played it that way. I think, and I don't know how Skylanders works, but when you look at Star Wars, people bought that to play the Star Wars levels. I don't know that people that got in the first place for, say, 2.0 to play Avengers or 3.0 to play with Star Wars, because at that point it became an Avengers game and a Star Wars game with the occasional playset that was based on other Disney things, but a lot of people that were getting into, especially 3.0, I think, were buying it to play these Star Wars playsets. Wouldn't it have been wouldn't it have been a great selling point, and maybe to the point of getting people more interested to buy these, if you allowed those other characters to be played in those playsets? I can't think of any good reason not to. It really felt like just this almost, anal retentive thing of like, well, they don't belong there. They're not supposed to go there. You're not supposed to be able to play with Boba Fett in Avengers playset. All you would be doing is giving the player more freedom, and that's the whole point of these things. So, except for players that got these things mostly for toy box, I think that hurt it really hard, and I think that is probably one of the big things that hurt it for 3.0. At least all the Star Wars characters you can play between all the Star Wars sets. They learned their lesson there, but one of the big selling points for LEGO, and again, I don't know how well this is helping LEGO. I don't know how well those are doing. We could see LEGO next year or the year after say, okay, the Toy to Life thing is totally oversaturated. We're going to have to shut this down too, just like Disney did. We're not making enough money with it. I suspect that won't happen, and I'll suggest a couple reasons for that a little bit later. But I think that, as I said, they probably would have had a less of a problem with it, and that would have sold a little bit better had they allowed all of their characters to cross into all the various playsets. This is a frustration for me, and I haven't heard anybody else say this, so I don't know if I'm alone on it. Some people did complain, like IGN and other places, professional critics, complained with Disney Infinity 2.0 that the playsets were a little bit more bare bones, that they were, and I think they were a lot more bare bones, that they were really redundant, kind of uninspired, and the real fun there was the playset, or was the toy box, but that whole thing was really a letdown. And one of the things that made it a letdown for me is taking away the bubbles with all of the things that you collect to play in the toy box. We took away the major connective tissue that made it fun to do both and made you feel like you were having a complete experience when you played the playsets and you went into the toy box. And this started with Toy Story 3, which is the model for all of this. There was, when Toy Story 3 came out, they had this absolutely inspired, envelope-pushing movie tie-in game. I've never seen anything like this, that is essentially Disney Infinity without the Toys to Life thing, where you play these, and I still go back to it some. It's fun. It's as much fun as one, except that it's all Toy Story. As Disney Infinity, the first one, 1.0, I guess, where you go in and you play Toy Story levels, and then you collect all of the, like, costume pieces and characters and building tools, etc., in order to play around in the toy box. And there's also all of these really cool toy box missions. And Disney Infinity 1.0 didn't even have some of that stuff that I thought was really fun with the toy box. But it did have that component where when you go into the levels, be it Toy Story or Lone Ranger or Pirates of the Caribbean, you'd have to, as you were exploring, pick up all these things that you'd be able to use in the toy box. And they've done away with that. And I think that was also a big mistake, though I don't know that hurt their bottom line at all. It just made those two things way more separate than I think they ought to be, and kind of got away from the basic premise of you're a kid playing with your toys, and that's what it's supposed to feel like. So it's like you play the linear missions like you're pretending like you're playing, like you're making the movie, you know, or the TV show or whatever it is. And then you go into the toy box and you make up crazy outlandish stuff. It's almost like two moods of play, where like you're either playing the story or you're just messing around, like that big scene in Toy Story 3 where you have all the mashup of all the different characters at the beginning, where you've got a train heist, but you've got a giant dinosaur and you've got space aliens and all that stuff. And so you're really using your imagination, and you're not just pretending to play somebody else's story. So you have both of those things, and it was really organically put together, and we've kind of lost that, and that's the thing that I really missed about it. And so I think it got too far away from its initial premise, and overall that hurt it too, though I don't know if, as I said, the collecting stuff thing really hurt it that much. But that's an example of a thing they did in getting away from the idea of you have a physical toy, and then inside of this digital world you're playing with that toy. And I think we got too far away from that. LEGO Dimensions, I think, is in a lot of ways Disney Infinity done right, in that you're able to play with any character in anything, including the main story mode. Like, not just the extra levels you buy, but the main story that has cutscenes featuring just 3 characters, but you can play with other characters in it, and then they're just not involved in the cutscenes. And I think that's really fantastic. And it feels much more customizable, and it doesn't have the world building thing, which is a little bit surprising because it's Legos. Like, that's weird, right? Where like Legos are about building your own world, but this is all entirely story driven, or at the very least like linear level driven, and some of the levels aren't, you know, so story driven. But anyway, I think it's a better game overall, and it's kind of Disney Infinity without that fine print. Like, when I bought it, there wasn't anything I thought I might be able to do that it turned out I wasn't able to do, and I was let down after, you know, the cost of buying that initial set and then extra stuff to go with it. So like, I think that that game's got you know, a lot of selling points, a lot of features that Disney Infinity doesn't. And you know, Disney owns so many properties that they have the same thing LEGO Dimensions does, which is we've got all these different universes that we could cross, but they don't really cross them in actually the levels. And LEGO does, and that's the whole point of it. And so I feel like that game is a direct criticism in response to Disney Infinity and what it was lacking. And I think it's really interesting that now Disney Infinity is going away, and we're left with the thing that was trying to improve upon it. Is it going to last? I imagine it will, at least for a while. Now, people have complained that Toys to Life is really oversaturated. You go to Target or Walmart or wherever, and there's almost an entire, in some places there is an entire row of entire one side of an aisle of just Toys to Life now. There's so much of it, and most people can't afford to be into more than one, and even into one, most people can't buy everything. And most of these are designed where you don't have to buy everything. But I'm wondering if Disney Infinity getting out doesn't help LEGO Dimensions, or if people start to, or if it's not selling well either, and people are just already kind of fed up with it, with just this very notion. I wonder if some other company will jump in and try to take Disney Infinity's place. It's going to be really interesting to see what this whole genre is after this, but the reason I say that I don't think LEGO Dimensions is going to go away anytime soon is because I think that their infrastructure is more solid, and overall their costs aren't as crazy as Disney's costs had to have been. Because A, they're not putting out new hardware and a new starter kit every year or every couple of years, and they have a foundation that they've said they're going to be able to keep making up new levels and adding to, and that they're not built into the disc like some of the Disney ones were. The first Disney Infinity had a couple of levels built into the disc. They just didn't release until several months or a year after the first disc, but they were built in. LEGO is designed so that they can keep making levels if they want to build onto that initial system. So that's the first thing. The second thing is they already have that infrastructure set up because they're LEGO as far as building the figures. So I don't imagine that it's as costly for them because they're just making more LEGO kits. I wouldn't be surprised if the two departments aren't totally intertwined, so that it's not just part of their yearly spending for their LEGO kits, that it's built into a budget they already have for that. I don't know how that business works exactly. That's just a guess, but you're buying LEGO kits, and you put them together, and then they also have this little thing that you put on the bottom that allows you to put that character into the game. But essentially, they're still just regular LEGO kits, so that infrastructure is already built in for them. So I kind of imagine that it's not really as costly, and there's a reason that those kits are a lot smaller than a lot of their of course, than their regular Lego sets, and of course they're not cheap because it's Lego. People have complained about the cost, and that could be really hurting them and really hurt them in the long run. But I think that it's pretty comparable to the other games, especially because you're getting a Lego set and a thing that goes into the game, and like I said, not just like a statue. So minifigures already being the cost they are, like Legos are already really expensive. So like minifigures already being the cost that they are, and then add in you're also buying this for the component of the game. From LEGO's standpoint, I totally see why they went with the price points they did. They might eventually have to cut those some, and they do go on sale a lot, which is surprising because LEGO stuff almost never goes on sale, at least at regular retailers. So, like I said, I don't know what happens moving forward with Toys to Life. I think LEGO Dimensions is probably safe for now. I think at the point where they decided that they would have to put out their version of a 2.0, where either we got to the next generation of consoles, or the technology is just too far behind and they want to really increase graphic capabilities or whatever it is. They might rethink it at that point and consider canceling it. But I think right now they're probably good, and that'll be around for a while. Like I said, it'll be interesting to see if somebody else comes in. I'm also wondering about Playmation. Disney has this other Toys to Life thing that is in the aisle with all the other Toys to Life stuff, but it's actually misleading because it's not really the same thing. I did some research on this. I didn't realize this. Playmation was a thing that I didn't know exactly what it was, and it didn't look like anybody was ever buying it. Like, whenever I see that in stores, there's almost never It's almost always fully stocked, and there's like no spaces on any of the rows. Even while next to it, you'll see plenty of Disney Infinity and Lego Dimensions missing. And I'm like, what is this thing, and why is it still around when nobody seems to be buying it? That's still a mystery to me, but they are like these fully posable figures, and then you have these larger peripherals that you have to actually put on your person to use. So they have like arc reactors and Hulk hands and stuff, and it doesn't go with the system. These things are actually more like what Toys to Life sounds like in the first place, which is you play with toys and you completely use your imagination, and there's like a Jarvis voice that talks to you and tells you what to do, and you play out entire missions physically and in your head, and you shoot things that aren't there, and you roll around. And I watched a video where a little girl played with the repulsor, and she had to like set off a bomb and then run out of the room physically, close the door, listen for the explosion, and then come back in. And at first I thought it might be kind of lame, but as I was watching kids play this, I was like, I would have loved this when I was a kid. It looks really fun. This thing has gotten really cheap. It started off, the starter kits, at like $120, and now Amazon's got them for $30, and that seems to be the standard going price for them. I don't know what they are at the box stores, but eBay has them with a lot of dealers for that also, and the figures have gotten as cheap as $5-8. I may get a couple of those for Jason and do some video and see how that is, and if it's as fun as it looks. But I think it's really interesting that hasn't been canceled yet, but Disney Infinity has been. But then Disney Infinity's got to be a lot more expensive to make. Something else I should mention is that somehow or rather I'm finding myself kind of more excited to get more Disney Infinity now that it's getting canceled, because I know a lot of that stuff will get a whole lot cheaper, and it's easier to look at it now as just video games, as opposed to this like constant ongoing thing that you want it to keep building on, but inevitably they're going to keep sort of starting over. I realize it's not really starting over, but it feels like that. Now it's just video games. It's just they made 3 Disney Infinity games, and there's all these figures that you can get for them, and they'll get a lot cheaper. And ironically, now that it's limited and I know it has an end point, I'm kind of more inclined to go out and get the rest of it. The one thing that's going to suck, of course, is they will likely eventually shut down the online where you can't download other people's levels, and that was a really fun thing to do. I kind of enjoyed that more than even making my own levels, finding really cool levels other people had made, and they're not just like, a lot of them aren't just, you go around and explore. You could actually create a win condition. You can make mazes that you have to get to the end of, and you can sort of do boss battles and things like that. So, like, it'll be really sad and unfortunate to not have that stuff anymore, but just looking at them as video games, where they're not going to constantly put more stuff out that's going to eat at your wallet, it's kind of nice to know that there's an endpoint. So, I don't know. Weirdly, I'm excited because now I'm more interested to play more of this, but I'm not saying I wanted to see it die. I would have liked to have seen a Foundation, set disc last a lot longer. But anyway, leave your comments, let me know what you think, and thanks a lot for watching. I'm Captain Logan, and this concludes today's Captain's Log.